Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from Caring Our Way. Thanks so much for being here and for watching. This is our informational meeting about our Caregiving Listener Project. I'm going to give you some insights about the project, how you can join as a volunteer listener, and how you can join as a storyteller, and you can do both. We first launched this project 3 years ago. And I think about it this way. On a regular basis, I meet with a friend for dinner. And every time we leave dinner, she says to me, I tell you what I don't tell anyone else. And our listener project is really about creating an opportunity for a family caregiver to connect in a private Zoom room with a trained volunteer listener to do just that. Say what they don't feel comfortable saying to anyone else. During a caregiving experience, I think we feel the weight of our experiences, what we witness, what we feel, what we hear, and we might worry about, where do I put this? Not everyone can hear the stories of what happens during a caregiving experience. Not everybody can hear it because they might try to jump in and say, you know what you should do and give advice. We don't need that. What we need is someone who simply receives the story and then says, tell me more. And that's our Caregiving Listener Project. So I'll give you some insights about the logistics of the program. And I want to thank everybody who's joined me live. And you are welcome to share an introduction in the chat room about what brings you to our informational meeting and what you might be interested in, either joining as a volunteer listener or a storyteller, and you can do both. So just a little bit about me. I began supporting family caregivers in 1990. I launched one of the very first online caregiving communities in 1996, which I sold in 2020 because I had started to develop and deliver training programs, and that was becoming the core of my work. I also am a former family caregiver. I helped my parents. And my brother died in 2021. And after his death, I really asked what could have helped him during his life. And I landed on a good listener. And that really sparked what has become the Caregiving Listener Project, thinking about who do we know in our lives who could really use a good listener. And for my brother, I think it was a good listener who had no skin in the game, so to speak, who didn't know his wife, who didn't know his family, who could just simply receive his experiences. And that's really what I want anyone going through a difficult time to have, is a good listener. I had experienced what happens when we connect with a good listener in a couple different ways. We have a training program, which is our Certified Caregiving Consultant program. And that's a program to teach and train typically former family caregivers, sometimes their current family caregivers, who want to coach and consult family caregivers. So that's what the training teaches them to do. And in that training, there's a period of time where each training participant shares a 4-minute story, about anything related to their caregiving experience. It could be an overview, it could be a story about a minute, it could be a story about a day, a story about a relationship. It's their choice. And what would happen after they told these 4-minute stories and received good listening was I could see the weight of their story lifted from them. For instance, we had one training program participant, Lisa, who told the story of caring for her dad while raising her daughter as a single parent and trying to keep her career on track. And she told the story about how she really felt she had let her father down because she wasn't as present as she wanted to be. And after she told the story and we acknowledged her pain, we validated her experiences, we asked more questions to learn more, she looked like a completely different person. There was a veil that was then lifted after she shared her story and connected to good listeners. That is the power of having someone just listen to your story. And then after my brother died, and I thought he needed a good listener, I created a program called The Art of Listening. And that became the core curriculum for our volunteers who become listening artists in the Caregiving Listener Project. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So our next Caregiving Listener Project is October 10th, which is World Mental Health Awareness Day, and that's a Friday. And I think it's such a nice tie-in that oftentimes what can help us feel better about a challenging experience or situation or relationship is to connect with a listener. So here's what the project is about. When you want to be a volunteer listener, you actually complete our course. There's an archived class that you complete. It's self-paced. You determine when you want to complete it. And then after you complete that archived class, you join me for 1 hour of live training. We have training dates scheduled. And depending on demand, I'm happy to add in more. During that hour that you join me, we practice our listening skills and we talk about what it's like to actually create a listening session during our Caregiving Listener Project. So as a volunteer listener, what you do is create a listening session and we help you do that. And we teach you skills to use during your listening session. What's great about what you learn is that it's applicable in all areas of your life. You're going to use it October 10th and in your relationships with family members, with colleagues, with strangers. So the course really equips you with skills you can use anytime. After you complete that 2-hour training, then you pick a slot to volunteer. You can volunteer for 1 hour. And when you do that, you're going to hear 2 stories. A storyteller is going to join you for about 20-25 minutes. You're going to take a break, and then you're going to connect with your next storyteller. The hours that we're going to host the project on October 10th are between 9 a.m. Eastern Time and noon Eastern Time, and then in the afternoon. October 10th is a Friday. I've been debating about adding in an hour in the evening, and I might do that. And I'll just keep you posted as you join our project as a volunteer and a storyteller. I'll keep you posted. Okay, so that's what's required when you are a listener. Here's what it's like when you're a storyteller. You pick a 30-minute time slot. Again, you're going to be in a private Zoom room with a volunteer listener for about 20-25 minutes. When you join that private Zoom room, your volunteer listener is going to welcome you, share some insights, and then you're going to tell a 4-minute story. And it's whatever story you want to tell. And it doesn't have to be a story about caregiving. It could be a story about a bad day last week. Whatever feels like you want to release the weight of what you're carrying around a story, that's what you'd want to share with your volunteer listener. You can also look at this as an opportunity to practice telling a story that you might share later in a different format. So for instance, maybe you think, I wonder if I have a story that I could turn into a workshop. You could share that 4-minute story, which is the foundation of a bigger story during Caregiving Listener Project. We've had other storytellers talk out a story that they want to include in a book. It's really whatever works for you, works for us. We had another storyteller who wanted to talk out a process that she was using to support family caregivers because that was what was most helpful for her about the 4-minute story. That's what she told us. And actually what happened is because she did that, I said, let's do a workshop. So we did a workshop together. You don't have to memorize your 4-minute story. You could read it from a script. You could have a few notes to prompt you, or you could share it from memory. I do give guidance around how you can actually prepare your story before October 10th. And I think it's helpful because it starts you thinking through what's the story. And as you think it through and perhaps write out drafts, it actually starts to promote some healing for you. And then when you join to share that story with your volunteer listener, it adds in more healing for you. We do ask that if you are a storyteller or a listener, you complete a post-event survey because we want to know what worked, what can we improve, what can we tweak. And those who are joining live are sharing about their interest in joining us. And it's really helpful to hear what is inspiring for you to think about joining us as a listener or a storyteller. And one of our attendees is sharing she wants to be a listener. And what brought her here is the journey of taking care of both her parents. Yeah, it inspires us to think about how can I provide support I wish I would have had during difficult days. If you want, when you're a storyteller, you can ask your volunteer listener to actually record your story. And if you'd like, they can record it just for your purposes. Or if you feel comfortable, we can record it and share it on our community for other family caregivers to listen to. It's up to you. There is no requirement around recording. It's an option for you. A couple years ago, we were on the NASDAQ tower. I had given a presentation at NASDAQ to its parent caregivers employee resource group, and they did that for us. Isn't that awesome? Oh, I love looking at that. Actually, yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, I know it's so cool, isn't it? It's like a dream come true that something you created is on the NASDAQ tower. Like, wow. And I also think it's so important to acknowledge the importance of your participation in this project. It only happens because you have the kindness to volunteer as the listener, and you have the courage to tell a story. That's what drives our project. I have a colleague who was very helpful as I was thinking through what does this project look like? How do we do it? And when I showed her this to thank her for all her help, she started crying. And I think, okay, that means we're doing something meaningful and impactful. And that's the goal. We will help you promote your participation in this project. So when you join us as either a volunteer listener or a storyteller, we will give you images you can share on social media that promote your participation in this project because we want you to be able to talk about it with others. If you're a storyteller, I think it's so helpful to promote that you are a storyteller and then share a little bit about the story you're going to tell. And then after, you can share what your experience was like sharing the story. That's helpful. And again, I think about courage gives encouragement, right? You encourage others through your courage. Okay, so that's the overview for you. And for those of you who are joining live, I'll share a link in the chat room for you to join us on Caring Our Way, which is our online community to participate in the project. And if you're watching the archive, I'll share a link so you can do that as well. Okay, for those who are joining live, what questions might you have?
So I have a question about, so the training is going to kind of give us the parameters that we would have to follow or protocol we would have to follow as a listener or as a speaker, correct?
Yeah, so there's only requirement for volunteer listeners to complete a 2-hour training.
Okay.
You watch an hour, which is an archived class, and you can watch it whenever. And after you complete that archived class, then you schedule live training with me, which is an hour. And during that live training, we get into more specifics around what happens on October 10th. We practice some skills that you learn in the 1-hour archived training, and we help you set up success for the day. We give you some suggestions of questions you can ask the storyteller. We give you guidance, but we don't give you a script because we really want this to feel organic and natural. That's what's most important.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I have a little tickle in my throat today. So how does this sound to you guys, those of you who joined me live?
It sounds wonderful. I'm actually picking up where I had left off at one point, and I know you've met and communicated with a number of people. I have spoken about this with other people, but I had not finished the training and everything. So I'm like, instead of referring everybody else and having them tell me, oh, thank you, I was like, it's time for me to do it.
Oh, well, first, thank you for promoting and spreading the word. That's awesome. We really appreciate that. And I'm glad that the timing is right for you now to participate. And I think if you are interested in both, volunteering as a listener and as a storyteller, you can do both. And that could be a really interesting experience to see both sides.
I'm looking forward to it, Denise.
Good. It's good to
I,
see you. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, I did a training. It was through my organization. I was I can't think of it like right now, where we learned the importance of storytelling. And it was mind blowing how we don't, we're really like the first people to hear what's coming out of our mouths. But it's something when because what they had us do is tell each other a story. And then they had us tell that person's story. And it was just, it's next level. That's all I can describe it as. It's next level. A lot of people don't actively listen. So you had people, they would sit there and and they allowed for feedback. So a person said, I spoke to them. We spoke for like 5 minutes. I'm just kind of wondering how they were able to only tell my story in 2 minutes. And that just showed how much the person didn't listen.
Mm.
Wherein you had someone who only spoke just a little bit to the person, and they were able to hear what the person wasn't saying. And it was just, I love the work that you're doing. That's one of the
Oh,
reasons why I advocate for it. And when I say I was in training for trauma recovery, and that's what I spoke about. Even though I'm not in there and responding in the feed, I'm reading. And I tell them, listen, go over here. Here's the link. Reach out to her. She will, handhold and help you understand the importance of not just tending to, but being in that space and occupying that space so that you really understand. Yes, they're thirsty, but maybe they want their palate wet so that they can tell you something that has had a frog in their throat for so long. So I love what you're doing, Denise. It's beautiful. Please be encouraged. Just because you don't hear from everybody, you're doing the work. And God bless you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Kristen is a member of Caring Our Way, and I see her pop up. Yeah, it's always good to see you. Thanks for being here today. I told a story during one of our listener projects in February of 2024. And I thought I was going to tell a story about the differences between grieving my parents and grieving my brother. And that's where I started. But what I pivoted to was telling a story about my relationship with my sister-in-law, my brother's wife. And I was really struggling in that relationship with her because I didn't know what to do about how deeply she was grieving and how a lot of it just didn't make sense to me. I just didn't understand what was happening. And as I was sharing this with my listener, she asked some great questions. And then I had this question I asked myself, which is, what would my parents and my brother want me to do about my relationship with my sister-in-law? And my sister-in-law, I could feel this pressure to maintain the relationship with her. And I just didn't understand it. And so what answer I heard, which I said out loud, was, oh my gosh, I just need to choose love. I need to let go of everything I don't understand, and I just need to choose love and just love her. Spend time with her, make it a priority, just choose love. And I did. And then she died in July. So I talked about this in February, and she died 5 months later. And after she died, actually, while she was dying, I gained some insights into her own torment about my brother's death. And we knew she was a hoarder, but we didn't understand the extent of the hoarding because my brother was very protective of it and didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to share. And it was her guilt around her belief that she led to his death. That was what I felt, but didn't understand and couldn't articulate until she was dying. And others were sharing insights about what their experiences were with her were. And what I what I knew then when I was in the hospital with her as she was dying was I felt complete peace for her. I didn't resent her. I didn't feel anger toward her, which is where I was kind of dancing with. I was dancing with these emotions around. I don't understand her. I don't understand why my brother died. I don't understand their life together. And then I did. And I was so grateful that I had just chosen love because what struck me as my sister-in-law was dying is she couldn't love herself. She couldn't forgive herself. And thank goodness she had other people around her who just loved her. And I was so grateful that I had that insight, and I wouldn't have had it if I hadn't told a story in the Caregiving Listener Project. And that's the power of having space to talk out what doesn't make sense in your head or your heart. Yeah. So what was interesting is I started this project because of my brother's death. And isn't it interesting that I benefited from it, which transformed my relationship with my sister-in-law in the most important time. So that I had these last 5 months with her where I was totally accepting of her. And I don't mean that I had showed up for her in the past in a unkind way. I showed up in the best way I could. All it did was challenge me to show up in the really best way I could, which was total acceptance, total love. That's why it's great to have a good listener.
That's an inspiring story. Wow.
Yeah,
See
isn't
how
that
that
something?
one, but see how that one act became like a domino effect. Um, so yeah, that's cool. I was sitting here thinking like, because it's so stressful, as you all know, being a caregiver, which my journey is over with. Both my parents have passed on. But and so now I feel like I need to support other caregivers. And so I kind of informally kind of help other caregivers that I meet along the way. And I was just curious, like, where can people really find a space like that to be able to talk out, tell their stories or get support beyond us just providing informal spaces? I don't know if I'm articulating my question right, but because there's so many caregivers out there and they don't know what direction to go in or what to look for or even how to get that support or like this project here being able to just tell their story, just simply tell their story, if that makes sense.
Yes. And there's a couple answers that I'm going to tell you about. And I was just organizing it a little in my head. So I'm glad you shared that. That's a great question because really what we want to do is provide everyday support. We're talking about something that I can pull together twice a year, but what about the other days during the year? We have a couple programs. One is the certified caregiving consultant, which I had mentioned earlier, where really we're coaching and consulting with family caregivers. That's proven really powerful. The other program, which is volunteer-based, is a mentor program. And I'm really trying to build out our stable of mentors who can meet with a family caregiver. And this isn't enough, but it's a start once a month to create a space where the family caregiver can say, this is what has happened since I last talked with you. This is what I'm going through. And then the mentor really is another version of a listener and can make some referrals. Here's a resource that might be helpful for you. Here's an organization you can reach out to. So it's just a volunteer support system that I think is really helpful too. So what we're trying to do is create all these options so a family caregiver feels like, okay, now I understand what I can use and how I can use it and when I can use it. And it's not just a couple options, it's an array of options. When I had my online community, family caregivers started blogging, and this would have been in 2009. And that was early for family caregivers to start blogging. So I was one of the first that really encouraged family caregivers to start blogging. And that was transformative too. So it's storytelling through writing. So we have blogging now and Carrying Our Way too, blogging during and after caregiving. So anyone can start their own blog. I think that there are ways that we can support family caregivers that are innovative and unique and tailored to what the family caregiver needs and wants.
So what are the requirements to be a volunteer mentor?
You just have to go through our training. There is a cost. I think it's $30 for an individual to go through it. You complete archived master classes around the caregiving experience, and then you join me for 2 hours of live training. And that 2 hours of live training is really thinking through who are you as a mentor? Who do you want to work with? And what does a mentor session look like so that you feel equipped? And then you can be listed on Caring Our Way as a mentor. And you can also let family caregivers in your community know that you're available as a mentor. Oh, okay, so I'm glad I talked about the mentor training. I had,
I'm glad you did too.
yeah, I put the mentor training together maybe last year, and I keep thinking, I've got to get our mentors together. I've got to get us up and running. What I like about the mentor training is that you could be a mentor within a particular community, like your neighborhood, so to speak, where you live. You could be a mentor within a house of worship. You could be a mentor within the workplace where you work. And that's been the goal. And then on Caring Our Way in our community, that's been the goal, to think about how do we put mentors in spaces where family caregivers are. The other thing I like about the mentor program is that, again, you're volunteering once a month to really share, connect with a family caregiver who shares with you. And then you also have us behind you. So you can make a referral, for instance, to one of our certified caregiving consultants. You can invite whoever it is you're mentoring to participate in other activities that we offer through Caring Our Way. So you become like this conduit to create other successful, supportive opportunities for the family caregiver. The mentor program is on Caring Our Way. And I can share links to that as well before we close today. So if you guys are interested, I'd love for you to think about doing that too.
Yes, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, because I do think your question, Elle, has been so good, which is, I want to do more, but how do I do it? And it's helpful when someone has created really the path for you to do more. Okay, this has been so much fun for me to connect with you guys today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to close us for the recording, but those who are here live, stay with me and I'll share the link to the listener project and the mentor training. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you guys. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much. And thanks to those who are watching the archive. Check the show notes for your links.